Volkanovski's legacy just got dragged into the biggest matchmaking scandal of the year. And the crazy part is, this disaster was engineered long before any of us noticed.
Beat him, Mosvald and Murphy, I think, on paper are probably more deserving of that title shot, but we don't call the shots. That's up to the UFC, and they've given us Diego, so that's the card they've given us, and that's the one we've got to play.
UFC matchmakers just triggered a full-scale civil war in the fan base. The second Dana White dropped those historic Paramount fight announcements. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, made the MMA world angrier than Diego Lopes getting another title shot, while killers like Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy were left collecting dust in the shadows. And before you blink, stay right here, because in about 60 seconds, I'm dropping the shocking backstage reason Dana ignored two undefeated contenders for a rematch no one asked for.
1 week later, we have Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. UFC 325 from Sydney, Australia. Volk versus Diego. There's a bunch of other fights on there. I'll tell you later.
Even Alexander Volkanovski, calm, polite, always diplomatic, broke character, and basically admitted the UFC jumped the line because even he knows Movsar and Murphy earned the shot more than Lopes, yet he still tried to reassure fans that the rematch will be chaos once the cage door locks. But don't move, because I'm revealing a leaked camp reaction from Team Volk that flips this whole narrative upside down.
There was a bit in it, a bit of work involved. Obviously, we all know that I wanted to fight earlier. I wanted, I thought it was going to be December. We thought, Lerone Murphy, December. I guess UFC, and they were waiting for Jean Silva and Lopes. Then they were saying Lopes, and we're like, obviously we're like, we just fought that guy. Is there more deserving people, whatnot? But everybody knows that I'll fight anyone, right? So whoever they put in front of me, I'll do. But then it was looking like it wasn't going to happen. But then it did happen, which was great. Again, I thought, it was a Movsar deserving, Lerone Murphy. I thought they were the two guys. They're the guys I called out. UFC really won Lopes. At least everyone knows they're in for a trick. With your Movsars and Lerones, they're probably, they're more deserving. But are they going to bring a fight like Lopes would? I think the fans are going to appreciate the fight that me and Lopes are going to have.
Volkanovski's coach didn't even try to hide the confusion, saying they expected Murphy, Movsar, or the winner of Murphy versus Pico to get the call, especially after Murphy's soul-evaporating knockout that sent half the division into panic mode. But one perfectly timed Diego Lopes KO blew up the queue like a grenade and rewired the entire matchmaking board.
We thought it was going to be either Mosvald or Murphy, or the winner out of Murphy and can't remember who Murphy
and Pico, Aaron Pico.
Yes. And so we had that sort of, it was going to be out of Murphy or Pico, and maybe a Mosvald, but we didn't really have much hope on that. And then when Murphy had that spectacular KO, we said, yeah, it's Murphy, and all indications and everything, led to Murphy. Till Diego had his spectacular KO and everything changed.
Even Diego Lopes himself admitted 2 months ago that Lerone Murphy deserved the title shot more than anyone, and even showed sympathy for Movsar being snubbed, proving the craziest twist of all: the guy getting the shot thinks he shouldn't be getting it. And don't go anywhere, because what Lerone Murphy says next is the kind of quote that triggers Dana White instantly.
Could I ask you, who do you think should fight Volk next for the belt?
I think Lerone Murphy is making a great job in the last fight. I think he deserved the title shot. But I feel bad for Movsar, bro. I feel bad for Movsar because this guy is still undefeated in the UFC. But I don't know for why this guy pulled out your last fight.
Lerone Murphy fired back with pure heartbreak and venom, saying the game isn't about skill anymore, it's about popularity, and that missing his chance to fight one of the featherweight GOATs is what hurts the most. Movsar Evloev replied instantly, calling him out, inviting him to fight on the same card as the championship, daring him to settle this robbery with fists instead of tweets.
you are going to hollow out your product doing like this long enough. It's not just that you're not meeting expectations. You're just not. The fight business has always been one of manipulation. The fight business has always been one of the promoters massaging stuff to get what they want. It's a part and parcel of what they do. This is hardly some new practice, right? But it feels like there are moments in time where you can't really f around with that. And that's kind of what we're getting here. We're getting a lot of that. We're getting fights where there's obvious ways to go a different direction and they just don't go that direction, clearly because they've got some other aim in terms of how they want to generate revenue. They're just extracting wealth out of the bout rather than matchmaking for a real clear sense of who's the best.
Aljamain Sterling then detonated a bomb of his own, saying he agrees with Murphy and Movsar because the UFC passed over both undefeated contenders just to recycle Diego Lopes again. Sterling even said this is exactly how fighters fall out of love with the sport, because they're told we make the best matchups while watching decisions like this repeat again and again. And in 30 seconds, I'll tell you the one commentator who says this decision could permanently damage the UFC product.
We both know I know who I think deserves the shot at the title. Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy, to me, deserves a shot at the title. He's done everything the UFC's asked him, but he doesn't scream entertainment. And Diego Lopes does. And it's just in terms of flipping a fight one week, another numbered event the next week, you got to go with the guy who's gonna sell. Like, I think it's important for Paramount to get off to a really good start if they're going to drive subscriptions and want more people to watch. And it's honestly better for the sport itself to have this fight as opposed to the meritocracy of having Lerone Murphy, because he deserves it. I think Lerone Murphy does deserve it, or Movsar, like so it's not clear that Lerone does, or even Movsar, but Diego Lopes, man, he's an entertainer and people watch him.
Luke Thomas came in with a flamethrower, saying the UFC is slowly weakening its own product and valuing hype over legitimacy, squeezing the matchups for money instead of proving who the real best fighter is. And behind that criticism sits another uncomfortable truth no one wants to admit. Volkanovski is entering a battle he cannot win.
Do you think this will be Volkanovski's final fight? It's all there, 37 years old. He said his family wanted him to retire after the last one. He's been open about that. It's back in Sydney. He hasn't fought there in 3 years. I don't know. It feels like the stage is kind of set here.
I think if he loses, this might be it for him. You know, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Come on, man. Like, it's
of course.
You know, yeah. So if he loses, this might be it for him. If he wins, there's no way he's going to continue to fight until he loses. If he wins this fight, he's going to fight the next challenger, whoever that may be, Lerone or Movsar. But if he loses, this is probably it for him.
Dane Thomas says Volk is trapped in a no-win scenario. Beat Diego again, and the world shrugs because he already did it last year. Lose to Diego, and it might mark the end of his legendary career. Thomas says Murphy earned the shot through pure merit, Movsar through domination, but Lopes brings fireworks and attention, and in modern UFC, attention buys opportunity.
What are they doing? What are they doing with this? Of all the decisions they could make, there's some that we wouldn't have been happy with. Listen, I understand that, like, no matter what, it wouldn't have been ideal. You pick Murphy to fight. Oh, he ain't beat no one. He's acting like he's Tony Ferguson of the division. There would have been these complaints. Like, oh, what? He fucking took Josh Emmett to a decision? Even though that's how Ilya got his belt. Different Josh Emmett, different circumstance. You have an abundance of people to give a title shot here. It's not just Ilya or nothing, you know?
Thomas even warned that if Volk loses this fight, it might be the final chapter of his story. But if he wins, he'll be forced to face either Murphy or Movsar next. Two undefeated monsters with nothing to lose. This isn't matchmaking, it's a pressure cooker disguised as a pay-per-view.
You got to think about Volk's legacy. Why will it read 2 Lopes fights in a row at the end of his career? You got to think about fresh matchups for him here. Something new. An undefeated guy in Murphy. An undefeated Dagestani in Evloev that has a win over Lopes. That has a win over Aljo. Who would be another option here. And I think Evloev and Aljo's claims are a lot better than Murphy's, but still, not Lopes. Not Lopes. Aljo's a former champ at bantamweight, moved up. Yes, he lost to Evloev, beat Brian Ortega, beat Calvin Kattar in his featherweight debut. He was a guy on his way to being the bantamweight GOAT before he lost to O'Malley, moved up. He's gone 2-1 since then.
Mike Heck reacted with pure disbelief, saying he can't remember the last time a main event announcement was dragged this brutally by the fans, especially a Volk versus Lopes rematch that nobody put on their wish list. He thinks the UFC didn't expect the backlash to explode this hard, this fast.
I want to see Volk versus a hard wrestler again. That's what I want to see. I want to see how he deals with it. I think he'd beat Aljo, but it'd be a fresh name, an interesting name. Same with Evloev, undefeated. Yeah, undefeated Evloev. I think he might have a draw on his record or something like that. And some split decisions and interesting decisions, don't get me wrong. But an exciting Dagestani undefeated guy on the come up. Volk's answer to that would be interesting to see in the last fight of his career. This is in Australia. Maybe Volk won't retire here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll still see these matchups. But it's in Australia. And I don't know when this is going to align for Volk again. It might be a couple of years before the stars align to where Volk can defend his belt in Australia again. So this is like a golden opportunity for Volk to win a fight and then just go in front of the Australian crowd. Thanks very much. It was I'm the greatest featherweight of all time, and that would be cemented in my opinion.
MMA Guru unloaded too, saying no matchup would have pleased everyone, but picking Lopes was the easiest way for fans to rage. He says Murphy hasn't beaten the exact right opponents. Sterling could have been a better option with his championship pedigree, and Movsar's the undefeated Dagestani Volk fans have been dying to see him tested against. Guru believes Volk beats Sterling, but Movsar is the wild card, the undefeated warrior who can make Volk's final fight a defining moment forever.
And a lot of people will say, oh, there's some other guys out there. Murphy, I've been told he's too boring. Lots of love, but you know, maybe on the microphone, not as a fighter, but getting out there and selling fights and shooting and then doing that side of things. Some fighters just take a little bit more time if you don't want to say it with your chest. Muzan Ivalov or whatever, no one cares. No one cares. No one cares to see him fight. Aljamain Sterling, UFC hates you, my friend. I love you. I love you. Your rum's outstanding, but the bigwigs, they hate you for some reason. Sorry, Cobb.
He even highlighted the poetic angle, Volk versus Movsar in Australia, the champion defending in front of his people, the ultimate final chapter of a legendary featherweight story. Dan Hooker, long before all this chaos, predicted the Lopes rematch, saying Murphy doesn't move the needle and Movsar lacks fan interest, even if both are elite fighters. He praised Sterling, but said popularity doesn't always follow greatness, exactly why Diego Lopes slid into the golden seat while two undefeated contenders were left behind. And that's the battlefield we're standing on right now. Controversy, confusion, and a champion caught in the crossfire. Drop your thoughts about this UFC 325 bombshell in the comments, and hit that subscribe button for more War Room updates from inside the fight game.